Hello, everybody. Welcome to Columbus Free Press Salon. We're March 14th, 2026. The world is ablaze in a lot of ways, but we're going to speak about two particular issues and then maybe even larger than that. We're welcoming Phil Wilayto. He's calling in from New York City, but he's from Virginia, so he'll introduce himself a little bit more than that. But he's written books, much on Iran as well as visited there, and then also is at a Cuban solidarity conference that may impact us a little bit because they're trying to create sort of like the old style that we did with the Veterans for Peace and the IFCOs, Pastors for Peace stuff, caravans to go down and to deliver things from probably Mexico or someplace to Cuba. So some stuff we've done historically, so it'd be great to hear more about that. So Phil doesn't have much time, so I'm going to let him start right up, and then we can extend our conversation as he exits out if he needs to, or if he gets fired up, he may stay with us. So thanks again, Phil. Again, he's in New York, but he's from Virginia, and will introduce himself more than I will right now. Thanks, Phil. Take care.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. We have overcome all technical problems on this end. Thanks so much for inviting me to be on the program this evening. I really appreciate it. We are trying to get out information as widely as possible about we know about what's happening in Iran. And we are in touch with one old friend there in Tehran, Habib Ahmadzadeh, who is a novelist and filmmaker and fought in the Iran-Iraq War as a teenager. And is living in Tehran and is living through constant bombardment. So I want to talk about a little bit about that. But I'd like to just start off with in kind of an overview of what's going on right now. And everyone understands that on February 23rd, the United States and Israel began a bombardment across many cities in Iran. And that the attacks in Tehran killed the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And his son, Ayatollah Khamenei, is also has now been elected the supreme leader. And his father, of course, but also his mother, his wife, and his child were also killed in that same bombing. I saw a flyer here at the Cuba conference. It's the U.S. Cuba Normalization Conference. You can Google it, and it's actually tomorrow's action sessions are going to be posted online. The instructions there on their website, U.S. Cuba Normalization Conference.
Yeah, it's been live streamed all today and will be tomorrow as well. Yeah.
Terrific. And there are people here from the Cuban Federation of Women, the president of the Cuba Jurists Lawyers Association, many longtime solidarity activists, and tomorrow is going to be a discussion of action proposals. I did see a flyer at the conference that said "Stop Trump's war against Iran," and I think that's the wrong way to formulate it. We said stop Johnson's war against Vietnam and stop Clinton's war against Yugoslavia and stop Bush's war against Iraq. And I think it kind of gives rise to the feeling if we just got rid of whoever's in charge right now, we could get somebody better in there and these things wouldn't happen. I think it's better to step back and take a broader view. After the Second World War, the U.S. emerged as the sole superpower in the world. Europe had been devastated. The Soviet Union lost 20 million people and a third of its industrial capacity. China was, still going through its struggle, building towards a revolution in 49. And the United States was in charge. And opened the Cold War against the socialist camp. And that's no longer the case today. China had a revolution and is now grown to be the second largest economy in the world, second only to the United States. The Soviet Union developed the bomb. BRICS has emerged as another gathering of countries that are not dominated by the U.S. So it's a multipolar world, and this isn't something that the U.S. ruling class is willing to accept. It can't live in peaceful, law-abiding relations with other countries. And of course, that gets into the nature of capitalism: expand or die. And if I don't have this piece of land, someone else will, so I have to grab it first, and so on. But the United States ruling class, in particular, is not going to accept a one among equals relationship with the rest of the world. So I think that's what's behind, the America First slogan. Trump was allowed to become president. This country isn't run by presidents. It's run by that 1% of the 1% of the ruling class that Occupy movement years ago taught us really runs the thing. And I think that most extreme section of that class has decided that it is going, if it can't dominate the world economically, it's going to dominate it militarily. And it's basically opened up a new era of U.S. foreign policy, which is, we run the world, we tell you what to do, and if you give us any grief of any kind, friend or foe, we will destroy you. And you can look at it from a personality point of view of Trump, who is not a crazy person. He's a very devious, cunning person. He's not crazy, but I think he has tasted blood and he likes it. And so there's a toxic masculine, testosterone driven aspect to this. But at the bottom of it, I think it's the fact that the U.S. ruling class, or at least an extreme section of it, has decided to go for broke. So they bombed Venezuela. They kidnapped the president and his wife, First Commandant Celia Flores. They in the middle of negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program, which Iran insists is for peaceful purposes, and Trump is saying that Iran was within weeks of developing a bomb and attacking Israel and possibly the U.S., even though the United Nations nuclear watchdog office, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, says there's no evidence that Iran is trying to build a nuclear bomb. It does have a program to enrich uranium for peaceful energy purposes, which it needs, but there's no evidence that it's developing a bomb. But in the middle of these negotiations, which Iran thought were proceeding, the bombing began, and they assassinated the leader of the country, and they've been bombing major cities all over Iran. And it's just in the middle of that, they open up a whole new offensive against Cuba. This small country of 11 million people, 10, 11 million people that doesn't have, a huge army or military, not at all. They've cut off all oil shipments to Cuba. So they haven't had any oil in the country for months. And we were hearing from today from one of the speakers at the conference who was explaining they don't have the oil to fund to fill up gasoline in government vehicles. So she described the situation where there was a complaint about domestic violence, and the court that would deal with that didn't have any gasoline to go out and visit the family and try to intervene. They're cooking with wood and with charcoal, and they can't do that in their own homes, so they're going out on the sidewalk to do it because the houses aren't equipped for that. So they're in a terrible situation, and the U.S. government actually wants to starve them into some kind of submission. And the latest news is that the president of the country, Diaz Ferro, is in negotiations with the Trump administration. We're not sure what about, and we're not sure that some kind of attack won't take place during those negotiations. So it's a really difficult, situation. And most people know very little about Iran. More people in the political movement have traveled to Cuba, but people know very little about Iran, and most of what they hear is very one-sided. When we went to Iran in 2007 and we landed in Tehran, took a flight to Shiraz in further south, and then met up with our driver and interpreter and drove 1,200 miles through the country. 5 people from the U.S. and 2 Iranians. And we visited Esfahan, Hom, Yazd, Shiraz, and, spent some time in Tehran. And we found no hostility towards the United States, even though it was a very tense time. And some people thought the U.S. was going to invade. They had sent a U.S. aircraft carrier, I think the Eisenhower, over there. And we even ran into a group of 300 Revolutionary Guards. We were visiting a kind of a tourist spot in Yazd. And as we were leaving, they were coming in. And these are the people that, the organization that Hillary Clinton declared to be a terrorist organization. And you would think if anybody would be hostile to people from the U.S., it would be them. And so they're walking towards us, and we're walking towards them to get to our car. And somebody yelled out, "Where are you from?" in English. And I was about to yell out, "Canada." And somebody said, "United States." And I swear, all of a sudden, about a dozen guys raised their hands and said, "Peace, welcome, friendship." And a bunch of people came over to us, and they started peppering us with questions. We explained we were there on a peace mission, trying to reduce tensions between the U.S. and Iran. And they were so friendly. And I thought, I don't know what would happen if, a bunch of special forces, ran into 5 Iranians visiting the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. I don't know how that would go. So we got a very different view. And I did write a book. It's called In Defense of Iran, Notes from the U.S. Peace Delegation's Journey Through the Islamic Republic. We just reissued.
Phil, I appreciate your deep understanding and your experience. It's fantastic. Do you want to have time for others to speak with you, or do you want to hit and go? I don't know. So
with the conference ended tonight a little earlier than I thought, so I have time.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Please continue. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, and the book I think was helpful. It goes into some deep questions. It's written like a travelogue, like as we travel through, because our guide would give us little lectures about Iranian history and culture and religion and so on. And I read about 20 books about Iran, and then did a lot of speaking engagements with 2 Iranian Americans and picked up a lot from them. So the book, addresses questions: is Iran trying to develop a nuclear weapon? Does it oppress its women? Does it hate Jewish people? What is the status of gay people in Iran? It addresses all those questions, I think, in a very honest way. So it's not uncritical of Iranian society, but it does try to put things into a historical context, which can change your perception of how things happen. Someone who goes over from the United States, take a snapshot picture of Iran and comes back and says, "Well, this is what's going on. This is what's happening there. This is what it's all about." No, that's not right. And we didn't pretend we had done that. But we said, if they tell you Iran is all one way and you go over there, if they tell you it's all a country painted in black and white, and you go over there and find out that there are actually rainbows, you know that you're lied to. And you may not know everything about Iran, but the view that you're being given is false. And so I think the book is helpful. And also during this period, I wrote to 7 or 8 people. And hello? So I think the book is helpful. I wrote to 7 or 8 people. And I'm getting 7 or 8 people. I'm getting feedback here. I'm getting feedback. Um, do you hear it? Do you hear it?
Yeah, sorry. I think people were trying to click on the.
I don't. I'm asking. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right. There was a great deal of feedback there for a minute. So I wrote to about 7 or 8 people that we had met in Iran and stayed in touch with. And from a range of different occupations, situations in the country. And I only hear back from one. He's a good friend, Habib Ahmadinejad, who is a author and filmmaker, and a guy who fought in the 8-year Iran-Iraq War. Because their first attack was.
No. Well, hopefully we collect that back up soon. Maybe you'll have to reconnect. But thank you. He was starting to get us into sort of his involvement historically, but also um, where we have been as well. I mean, historically, Ohio, Columbus has been active, right? And we sort of know that history he was laying out and some of the work that's been done. Can everybody hear me for sure? Yes? Yeah? Okay. So we'll hopefully get him back. He has written books. He's come to Columbus a few times. So we were sort of wanting to have this salon. We were at a point that we were talking about where should we be at this conversation with where are we at? Where as a state, as a nation,
Hello?
as a people. Yeah, hey, thanks for coming back on.
Yeah,
Phil.
I didn't go off and I didn't come back on. Something else is happening. I don't understand. I'm sorry. But anyway,
Okay. Okay,
Habib has
good.
been.
So, okay, we'll get back. I was just saying that you were giving us some great history and continue.
So Habib's been writing us every day or so, as he can, and the bombs are falling on Tehran, where he lives, and he says that since Ayatollah Khomeini was assassinated, he has, in people's minds, been elevated to the level of a martyr. And of course, this is very important in Shia religion, as it is in many religions. I was brought up a Catholic, and we had a lot of talk about martyrs. But he's now a national martyr. He gave his life for the people, because he could have left Tehran and gone to some safe place, but he refused to do that. So people came out, in respect for him, out into the streets while the bombs were falling, and his daughters and their children were on this one demonstration that was attacked, and bombs fell on the demonstration, and um, and some people were killed. So it's very serious. But he says that these demonstrations in support of the new supreme leader are happening all over the country, and that people are completely defiant. Now, of course, there are people who are opposed to the government who even called on Trump and Netanyahu to attack, well, specifically Trump, to attack the country because of their hatred of the government. And there are contradictions within society, and no one would say there weren't. But this attack, particularly the assassination of the supreme leader, seems to have united most of the country in defiance of this, of this attack. If anything, Iranians are patriots, and their country goes back 3,000-4,000 years. So, and Habib keeps mentioning that the people attacking them, Trump and all his cohorts and so on were part of the whole Epstein episode. And so he says that some of the missiles being shot from Iran are inscribed, "This is in revenge for the victims of Epstein Island." So let me stop there, and we'll have a dialogue. But thanks again for inviting me on.
No, thanks, Phil. Thanks. I'm sorry for the disruption. I think right when you had that disruption, it was when we were asked to live um, uh, the YouTube thing. So everybody was doing that, I think, at the same time. So to approve the YouTube. So you are live, and so we really are appreciating your historical recollection of things, and collection of thought of where we're at. The connection between sort of the triangle that we're working with right now militarily is Venezuela, Cuba, and Iran, as well as many others, the pivot to China, whatever. But now it seems like we're pivoting to his hemispheric, Greenland all the way down to the Patagonia um, type of attitude as America first. But then we have Iran thrown into things. So the attack and the air assaults, the straight stuff that is about a foreign policy that I'm sort of interested in hearing more about where you're thinking about. U.S. foreign policy has always been, as you said, about who has control of the land and then the resources below that. But there is some confliction. There's within that. And then the policy about decapitation, are we moving towards that kind of generational switch, do you feel? Because we do see that interest on Cuba as well. That's why we're linking Iran and Cuba, Venezuela, and many others. I mean, we could extend it out to many different places, but we're speaking about that today. So do you have any thoughts on that, please?
Well, years ago, I worked in a factory in Chesapeake, Virginia, and we had a union, and we were having some union struggles, and we were trying to get some ventilation into the place because it had no air conditioning, no ventilation, and in the middle of the summer, people were falling out. So we filed a collective grievance, and we were trying to get the attention, of the boss. And one day somebody came in and handed out surgical masks and said we should wear them when the boss comes by so that he sees that we think he's toxic. So he comes walking through, and he got almost through the entire line of workers before he noticed anything. And it kind of hit me that the workers have been talking about, oh man, he must not have got any sleep last night. Yeah, maybe he's not getting along with his wife. They were talking about him like he was a person. And I realized that he didn't notice us, the people that working in his factory. And I think Trump phenomenally, and most of the ruling class underestimate the rest of the world, the rest of the people, the working class. They don't understand that these are real people with real feelings and real pride and real resiliency. And they seem to have truly thought that if they decapitate the leadership of Iran, that the people would rise up and take over the government. I mean, that's what they were saying. And instead, the people got really upset, really angry that this United States, which had overthrown the popular elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953, that had brought back the hated Shah, that had put sanctions on the country since the revolution, that supported Iraq and Iran both during the 8-year war, hoping to weaken them both. They shot down a civilian Airbus, killed 300 people, supposedly by mistake, and never even apologized. That this United States was just attacked Venezuela, which has this horrible history, and which so many public figures are tied in, with the Epstein episode. It's not an episode. It's, I hate to admit it, but it looks like QAnon had something right. Maybe not the pizza parlor, but there appears to be a whole range of powerful political, economic, financial figures who are tied into each other in many ways, and were aware of or participated in Epstein's mass pedophilia. And it looks like the noose is getting closer and closer around the top circles of the Trump administration. And some people think, well, that's why he did Venezuela. That's why he did Iran, that it's just a distraction. Well, it's much more than that, but he probably thinks it doesn't hurt. So I think that what I'm trying to say is that they underestimate the people. They underestimate Cuba. They think that if they can starve Cuba, that the people will again rise up and overthrow the government, or at least the government will say, okay, uncle, what do you want us to do? And the Iranian people went through an 8-year horrible war with Iraq and suffered 600,000 casualties, and never surrendered, never gave up. And Cuba has been through, uh, an increasingly oppressive system of sanctions and the blockade since the revolution of '59, and they don't give up. They don't give in. They're proud people, and they're not going to give in to the country that has been trying to undermine them all this time. So, yeah, I think they've greatly underestimated. I mean, there was a mass demonstration in Greenland, when Trump threatened to take over the country. There are mass demonstrations in Venezuela now, in support of the government, demanding President Maduro, and First Commandant Celia Flores be sent back. So I think they're in a quandary. I really do. I think Trump can drop all the bombs he wants, but it's not going to make Iran surrender or give up its sovereignty. It's just not going to do that. The people are far too patriotic for that, and they're resilient and they're courageous, and that's why they're coming out on the street. They're holding Ramadan ceremonies at night during the bombing, and it's their way of saying no, no, we're not going to give in. We're not going to be afraid. We're not going to, and they've lost. I don't know. I think the latest figure is 1,300 people. Um, it's I think at some point there's only three things that can happen. The U.S. can invade, which they're not going to do because it's a country of 90 million people, and that's more than, what is it, 2 or 3 times the size of Iraq, and you know how that went for them. So they're not going to send in ground troops. They could declare victory. They could. Trump, came close to it a few days ago. He said most of the objectives have been reached. He could just say, okay, we beat them down. They have no nuclear capability. We've taken out, almost all their ballistic missiles, and their allies, around the region are defeated. Mission accomplished. Let's go home. Or they could go to the next level, which would be, which no one's talking about yet, but I'm sure no one's talking about publicly, but I'm sure it's being discussed, in the high government circles, which is to drop a tactical nuclear weapon on Tehran, or even out in the desert, and say the next one is Tehran. It could go that far. I don't know. I think we make a mistake by saying we've seen the limit of their cruelty. I think that, there are no limits, but there are political considerations. So,
Yeah, so Phil, you're speaking of a rational world. Are we in a rational world? I mean, in a way, your escalation, your historical escalations are accurate. They play out. But are we in a world that is playing that game anymore? I don't know. That's when I start talking to people and they're like confused. I'm not confused, conflicted. I would say more the word is conflicted.
yeah, I think the rule of law is over. They don't care anymore. I mean, they never did. They always, ask the indigenous people about treaties. They said they broke every promise they made except one. He promised to take our land. But they walked away from Trump walked away from the nuclear agreement that they had with Iran, and there was no reason for that. And just on the issue of nuclear weapons, which is something that Trump is hammering in over and over again, they were going to blow us up. During the Iran-Iraq war, Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons, ordered the use of chemical weapons against Iranians. This is documented by the United Nations. And Iran never responded in kind. And that's documented by the United Nations. And the reason is because Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the first supreme leader, said that use of chemical weapons would be against Islam because it's a weapon of mass destruction. It kills the innocent as well as combatants. So they never used it. And the president recently assassinated Supreme Leader Khomeini had declared a fatwa against nuclear weapons fairly early on in his come to power. And he said it would the same thing. It would be against Islam because it's a weapon of mass destruction. So, if you want to call them religious fanatics, you can't have it both ways. But there is no actual evidence. And besides which, Trump says he destroyed all their facilities, back in June, June or July. So,
Yeah, so Phil, yeah, so Khamenei and Khomeini both had the you would call it a fatwa, but an understanding that nukes were off the table. We're not there now. They had this understanding of strategic patience, and that has been sort of eliminated in this recent attack by three levels in a lot of ways. His closest confidants were eliminated in these first days of this recent attack. And so now we have this young guy that lost, as you mentioned, a lot of issues that he's dealing with, personal injury as well as family loss. I mean, not just loss, murdered. Murdered by a state that invaded their country for many reasons of unknown reason. Please, if anybody has reason, share, because I don't think I've heard it anywhere, why we did it. You can lay a few libacious extol some kind of indication that there might have been something, but as Phil just said, we left the JCPOA, that the agreement that was historical. We've left the Paris Agreement on so many, the climate change issues. The U.S. Army, the U.S. military is the biggest enemy of the world, of the earth. And so what are we living in? What world are we living in at this point? Are we, as a progressive, we're journalists, Phil, we're journalists. We're trying to figure out how to cover what's going on in this world, right? And where we're at, we're all probably left, if not farther, of the perspective. Definitely don't like military, most of us. There's not all pacifists are on this group. So can you sort of explain what's building locally at the conference? What are some issues of action that may be taking place that we can latch into and start reporting? Sort of like the peace walk was, we had people from Columbus go down and join the peace walk that the Buddhists had done. And that was a growing emphasis. I think that's going to have major impact on the Southern political structure somehow down the road. But can you speak to that a little bit? Yeah.
Well, it certainly looks grim. But let me throw a few things in to kind of balance the perspective. If Trump had not initiated these wars and he had concentrated on things that raised the standard of living of the working class in this country, and particularly if he had motivated the MAGA movement to be more than passive observers and, filling up seats at his rallies, if they became more of an organized force, we might have been moving towards actual fascism. But he didn't do that. Before Trump was elected, did some background reading on the rise of the Third Reich, Nazis in Germany. And Hitler, he was very strategic about trying to win over the working class until he didn't need them anymore and he got dictatorial powers and, he began serving the interests of, the bourgeoisie, the industrial class more. But in the beginning, he really did try to build up that base of support. And Trump is squandering that, which is good for us. And on a number of issues. The cost of living is still going up. This war is wreaking havoc with gasoline, which means that every other commodity that's transported by truck will become more expensive. People, some of his base is mad at him because he's resisted the release of the Epstein files, which they thought he was going to release. Some of them are mad because of these wars, which they didn't want to be involved in. They wanted, America first. And meanwhile, the rest of the country, which is more than half, I believe, I think that the statistics are like 30% of the country still supports Trump. Um, the rest of us are thinking that, maybe he's gone mad. That it does seem irrational, but it's not. It's very rational. It's just that it's no longer respecting the rule of law. The United Nations, he's starting his own coalition for peace, with him at the head. They want to intervene in situations all over the world.
Yeah, piece of this, a piece of that. Yeah.
There, that's it. Um, I do think that ICE is extremely dangerous, not only for the terrible things it's doing now, but because it's developing as a large paramilitary force that is under Trump's direct command. And that parallels what Hitler did with the building of the stormtroopers, the SA, which grew to 4 million members until that threatened the military, and he had to make a decision of who to throw his lot in with. So it's crazy, but I think going back to the idea that the U.S. ruling class felt that it was slipping, that eventually China would overtake it economically, and China is not starting wars; it's making trade relationships all over the world, and that's very disconcerting to the ruling class. So a section of them just said we're going to clamp down. We're going to show what we can do. Every country is going to now bow down to us, and no questions asked, or we'll get them. And what's the solution? Well, I think that his base is eroding. I think that those of us in the anti-war movement also have to be in the domestic struggles. I think the slogan "Stop the wars at home and abroad" is the one to work under, among many others. Um, I think that we need, as activists, we need to deepen our roots in the working class and the oppressed communities. And we can't just go up to someone and say, we're having a protest on Iran, will you come? I did that years ago with a good friend of mine in the black community. And she said, look, Phil, I really appreciate the fact that you care about what's going on in other parts of the world, but we had a young kid murdered on our block the other day, and we're going to a vigil now. And that's what I got to worry about. If we can't draw the connection between what's happening in this country and what's happening beyond, an anti-war movement will be, people who don't have particular other problems to worry about. So that's one thing that I think is desperately important. And the movement is much weaker than it used to be. So, some of us need to redouble our efforts as much as we can and try to reach the public, which is why I'm so glad you invited me to be on today. I did an interview earlier today with a reporter for Sputnik News and RT, the two Russian news agencies, and we're trying to educate people in our area. We've had a couple of meetings on Iran. We had a protest the day after the attack. They got some television attention. So that's what we can do to help, is just to spread the word. Habib said, please have more protests, tell more people of what's going on, spread the word, tell them what the Iranian people are going through.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I was reading somebody's. Anybody have any conceptual or realities that they want to bring us back to? We've sort of floated on. No, I'm kidding. We are doing what we're doing. We're focusing on today. This is Columbus Free Press Salon. For those that are on the line, Columbus Free Press Salon, March 14th, 2026. We have Phil Wilayto here, who's calling in from New York at the conference on Cuba solidarity and normalization. We have Stephen that wants to speak on some stuff in a second, but thank you for joining us. This is our Columbus Free Press, and we're focusing on Iran and Cuba as
Steve's hand is raised.
Yeah, I know. Thanks, Stephen. Come on.
Yeah. I was listening to Jim Garrison. I don't know if you ever heard of him, recommended by Tatanka Bricka a long time, workers advocate and so forth. If you don't know about him, you should look him up. He worked on the boycotts in California way back when. But Jim Garrison was going on about the history And this is like the 2020, uh, what is the document that the Heritage Foundation is working on? This is kind of
Project
a document.
2025.
Yeah, well, that's gone now. This is 2026. So anyway, the 2026 thing is what Netanyahu and all these right-wing fascists have been working on around the world for years. Israel, one being an instant of trying to maintain and take over their biblical territory, which, if you go by what Christ was saying, when Peter cut off the guard's ear, what did Christ do? He just stuck it back on the guy's head, or healed him, as they say. But I don't want to sound nonchalant about that.
Okay,
But
Steve, what are you saying? Oh, keep
so,
going.
this is not Israel what Netanyahu's doing. It's not Christian what Trump's doing. All these guys, you got Peter Thiel running in the background, who's now taken over the Piketon plant, security in Ohio, that whole cabal. People are working on this in the background. We've got things going on all over the place where the fascists are getting their fingers under the moral fortitude that the people of the planet have established so far. So they're trying to scratch out civilization like it's a lottery ticket or something. But they're going to come up losing underneath. That's it. I'm done.
Thanks, Steve. Joseph has something. Phil, we'll let you respond to a few things if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joseph.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, part of what this whole conflict and with what's happening with Cuba, both tie into our societal dependence on fossil fuels. And I think one kind of radical thing everybody could do is get off them as much as possible. Get a electric vehicle, maybe a scooter, maybe a car, and put solar on your house if you can, if that's available to you, or just buy one of these apartment solar panels. But we're fighting over a resource which is killing us, and we've been fighting over that resource for like 50 plus years. Could you speak to that?
And also, it is planting season, and the largest amount of organic fertilizer comes through the Strait of Hormuz globally. So that you know that that's a whole other reality that's in this fight. It's not just oil; it's other things that are going on. So, Phil, you've had a few things thrown at you. Do you want to?
Well, if you listen to the scientists who study global warming, we're screwed. We're just screwed. We're going to hit, that 1.5 centigrade increase, and then go beyond that, where they say things are going to be pretty much irreversible and just get worse and worse and worse.
I
And
don't think
everybody,
and Phil, I don't think you have to describe too much into that about what just went through Columbus this past day. I mean, this was like 70-mile-an-hour winds, and it's crazy.
wow, wow. And this past week in Richmond, Virginia, we had 80 degrees one day and snow the next. Even the red hat folks are starting to say this is very strange weather we're having. So, I mean, if you only look at it from the point of view of what's happening to the environment, we have a limited amount of time in which to really change things. And I think at some point, the reality of what that means to agriculture, to to our elderly, to people who can't afford air conditioning, to the ability to sustain ourselves as a society is going to move a lot of people into action. The great Black nationalist leader Marcus Garvey once said, "When all else fails to mobilize the masses, the objective conditions will." And I think that's one thing that is going to move on it. And of course, yeah, we should all try to do everything we can to reduce our own carbon footprint, but that's not the issue. The greatest user of gasoline, of oil in the world is the U.S. Navy. The U.S. is the biggest polluter in the world. We can't stop that ourselves. We should all do what we can and try to, balance our own relationship with nature. That's important. But to solve the problem, you got to get out of capitalism. Capitalism is going to kill us. Frederick Engels said it's going to be either socialism or barbarism. And that's becoming clearer, I think, every day. So what is finally going to, move people? People generally move when they think if they revolt, they will be able to vastly improve their lives. Or conversely, if they don't revolt, things are going to get extremely worse. Those are, just so long as there's sort of, things are bad, but, maybe we can get through this. There's not going to be any upsurge. And I don't know what that would mean in this country. We don't have a viable left. We have a lot of people struggling very hard, many organizations out there, but it's not like the 30s, when you had mass organizations and parties, in a position to really lead mass struggles. So we may have to cobble something together. I know in Richmond, and another reason why we have the Virginia Defenders for Freedom, Justice, and Equality. It's a small local group, all volunteer, been around for 24 years. And we put out a quarterly newspaper that we've been publishing since 2005. We work on immigration, anti-war issues, sacred ground, which has to do with historical sites important to Black history. And we pay attention, to the day-to-day things that people are going through, as well as, we had a demonstration after Venezuela was attacked. We had a demonstration after Iran was attacked. Things have been happening in Richmond. You can get 100, 200, 300. We had 400 come out on an ICE protest. So that's hopeful. And the younger generation, I'm up here with three other friends, members of the organization from Richmond. One's 40, one's 28, one's 26. And they're not the oldest new folks that have joined our organization. And those folks don't. You ask them what they think about the capitalist system, they look at you like, why do you have to even ask that? They are looking for some radical alternative. And I think the people as a whole, I can't see soybean farmers, right? I was listening to an interview with the head of the National Soybean Farmers Association. And these were people who he said, were generally supportive of Trump. But the tariffs knocked the bottom out of them because their biggest customer is China. At some point, they've got to say, look, I think I bought a pig in a poke. This is not what I was thinking of. And, I don't know if I hate immigrants that much that I want to go under and lose my farm. Where the left
to get back to a little bit, thank you. But to get back to Iran a little bit, I think the new toll booth that Iran has put in, where they're now starting to negotiate in yuan. I believe the Chinese currency is what's now being negotiated. If you pay in the Chinese currency, the ships are being allowed through. And this is sort of a new, it's sort of like a new toll booth in a way, and they'll probably create that on the other side as well if this war continues. So I really think the U.S. foreign policy is shooting itself in the heart, actually, not even the foot, but the heart. But Mary Jane, be ready. I want to, because we're already talking about grow hemp instead of other things, and I know you got some stuff burning in your brain about some things. Folks are concerned about how to do personal work. As you say, do your due diligence, but also, as we've had Abby Martin's most recent film come through, the greatest enemy on earth of the earth is the U.S. military. So we are living in that kind of super power reality that we're in right now, and we're in the middle of it. And how do we deal with that? We're trying to create our own personal spaces. Mary Jane and others are trying to put together a campaign to defend not the constitution, the statutorial. That's maybe the one issue that we should have done was put it constitutionally instead of statutorily. But the right to products that are hemp made and or THC and other that kind of. So we're dealing with that in the state. We're dealing with a lot of things across this state. The loss of forestry. We don't even need to speak about racial or gender or other oppressive structures, because that's in front of our faces all the time, and we do need to deal with those, and we need to continue to write about those. And we are encouraging people. Phil, please, whenever you have some kind of article that you want to write, and don't write it for a gigantic organ. If you're writing it for defenders, I think we can use it on Free Press as well, right, Suzanne? But we do have some character. Yeah, we don't just post any old person's stuff. So,
thank you for that.
but yeah. So, anybody else have some ideas? Anything, Mary Jane? I do want to give you some time to tell us update on what's going on. And I do see some new people here, as well as many established. So our numbers, we sort of adjusted in midstream. We were going to talk about backing off the brink, and in a way, this conversation continues that, but backing the brink of how to create local anti-nuclear communities or hubs is what they're trying to do. They've gone from 10 to 23 nationally, and they were wanting to create one here in Columbus. And I don't see Pat or Chuck on, but I think because that subject was dropped a little bit. So that will be coming later down the road. There was a medical emergency of Jeremy, so we'll reschedule that. But it was great that we already had Phil scheduled, but then that he was able to take keynote on this one, so that was great. Do you have any final? We're getting close to 8. I don't know that you have other things if you want to get out of here, or if you want to stay around. We will probably be a little bit. We'll take off the live stuff soon and start getting a little bit more vernacular and speak about things. But Phil, do you have any closing remarks, or anybody have any things? And then Mary Jane, for sure, I want you to sign us off a little bit, please, with a benediction.
Well, it's a very, discouraging time, a very scary time. And, people are under a lot of mental stress, emotional pressure. We're all feeling it, whether you're an activist or not. And I think we need to trust that people will find a way. We are not going to accept a right-wing dictatorship. We're not going to accept going off the environmental brink. In Minneapolis, was supposed to be Trump's example. This is what I'll do to you in a democratic city. When you think you can defy me on immigration issues, we're going to flood it with brutal ICE agents. And it provoked the first call by labor unions for a general strike in many years, something that we've been trying to promote in Virginia, the consciousness of it. And labor unions and community organizations and faith-based groups called a one-day strike. And then there was a national effort to duplicate that on January 20th, I think it was. And it's embryonic, but I think that the only viable tool that we have as working people is to stop work and see the economy grind to a halt. No work, no shopping, no school. I'd like to see everybody, instead of doing those things, going out to their local financial district and clog up the works. Stay in the streets and make it impossible to conduct business. But I think the conditions are pushing us to more action, and whether the left is up to the task of providing some direction. And I don't mean take it over, but I think sometimes people's demands need to be formalized. There needs to be a program. There needs to be, organizational structure. Um, Demands a program and organizational structure, kind of the three things that you need. We got a lot of work to do, but years ago there was a volcano eruption at Mount Helen up in the state of Washington, and it was really terrible. And they said that nothing would grow on that mountain for 100 years. And the next spring, flowers and vegetation and bushes and little trees started to grow again. And I like that. I like that idea because life will find a way. And if life can find a way in the natural world, I think that humanity as a whole will find a way. I don't think it's going to be left to Trump to make the final call. I don't think it's up to him. I think it's up to us. And we just need to reach out and make more connections. And I want to stay in touch, Mark, with you and Yoshi and the other folks we work with, reestablish our ties because we used to work together. And we're trying to do the same thing. It's one reason I'm up here at the conference, to look for allies, look for friends, look for comrades, people we can unite with and strengthen our movement. Because it needs that desperately. But I think people should be hopeful that life will find a way, will find a way, and we're not stupid people. We're not people that Trump should underestimate, and that's what he's doing.
Thanks, Phil. Tim has a question. I think he's on, and then Mary Jane, if you want to share a little bit at the end, and then we'll probably start wrapping up the formal station. But thanks, Phil, again. That was a great update on a beat way to end your dour reflection of the world. No, I'm kidding.
Let's hold on a second there, Mark, because I have a question about this.
Yeah, please.
Pardon me?
Please.
Okay. Recently Spain basically rejected the use of our base on their soil, and sort of wondering if there's going to be others. Like, what if Qatar said, "Okay, you can't use our bases anymore for this attack on Iran"?
Switzerland already did stuff as well too. So
it's happening on the perimeter. How many others are there? I'm curious about that.
Yeah. Phil, I don't know if you have that
have any idea,
military wherewithal or not, but there have been actions of resistance one way or another. Spain and Italy have been very good on Palestine and the attack that has been happening on that whole population by the entity that is implanted by the British and part of political foreign policy that partitioning. I'm convinced that partitioning is the Western's poison for the rest of the world, of how they created these councils where folks just sat and said, this and this and this is mine, and the rest are whoever's. So anyways, Mary Jane, please hype us out. And Phil, thanks again for being with us. You'll have the last word unless you have to get going. But Mary Jane always gives us good word of what's going on down at the State House.
I'll have the last word right here.
All right.
Cannabis, marijuana. That's all. I'm done.
All right. Thank you.
No, I want to alert you guys to if you're interested in cannabis and marijuana and etc. There's a ballot issue that's going on right now, and if you're so inclined, try to find one and sign it. I don't know if I could explain this. It gets so complicated, and just 5 minutes allotted here. I think I need a year to dive back into it. You might remember issue two back in 2023 when it passed to allow adult use marijuana in the state of Ohio, which was a really major development. We went from HB 523 in 2016. Certainly Bob will remember that. Bob Petrakis will remember that. Guided us. Yes, he guided us through that. And then came, issue two in 2023, and became law, I think, just about 6 months there. Well, just right away. Okay, I think it's December 7th, actually, was when it went into force in 2023. But that made some people really unhappy. They thought that we didn't know what we were doing when we voted for this. All these people who was 2.2 million voters. Think about it, 2.2 million voters in Ohio passed that, went to the ballot box and passed it. Let that bake in your brain. But that wasn't good enough for DeWine. And so it has been, it's hard for me to describe the circus that's been down at the State House. So I started going to meetings because they all kept getting canceled. And they invented a bill called SB 52. And that would be the counter to the issue two that was the initiated statute that was passed, as I say, in 2023. You got to realize that was actually a law that was passed by the people. If the people can make law with initiated statutes, they got to go through a process of collecting signatures, yada yada. But we made a law and we passed, as I said, the state called issue two when it went on the ballot, and that was that. And one would think, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but an initiated statute is, like I said, a law passed by the people. A constitutional amendment goes into the Ohio Constitution. So it's a lot harder to change that than it is just to take the law, because the legislator thinks they could just go, since it's a legislative thing, we could just go in and butcher it. And butcher it, they did. They, like I say, the SB 56, I'm sorry, 50, I think I said 50, it was SB 56, didn't make a tremendous amount of changes. They kept some of the posts and these things the same and the possession amounts the same. But a couple things did happen. Number one, Governor DeWine decided a few years back that he didn't like intoxicating hemp products. I think he doesn't like marijuana to begin with, but particularly intoxicating hemp products. So he kept pushing the legislature to outlaw these. It's basically THC sold in a gas station as opposed to a dispensary. That's the difference. Not really. I mean, the dispensary stuff has gone through a tremendous amount of testing and things like that. We're pretty certain that it's safe. I'd say, on the other hand, if it's unlicensed, there's no really gatekeeper to ensure that it is what they say on the package. I could see a conflict there. I get that. But what they went in to do with SB 56 is they passed it for two things that really, really bothered me. I've been doing this for a really long time. 20, 30, 40 years, depending upon 50 years, even if you want to count them. And one of the things that I always wanted to make sure happened was that
you're only 21.
Jail for marijuana. Nobody should go to jail for marijuana, ever, 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 ever. Now, we could debate the nuances of that, but no, it should go to jail for marijuana. Well, what they did with SB 56, what did the legislature do? They put clauses in there. There were mandatory minimum sentences of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, month, whatever, what the violation was, but it was mandatory minimum sentence for marijuana. Like, let's say you're sitting in the back seat of a car and you're holding a joint, cop sees you, 3 days in jail. That sound fair? Is that what we voted for with issue two? No, that wasn't an issue two. So they just added this stuff on their own, and they passed it. They passed it at the end of last year. And there's a number of provisions. It gets complicated, so I don't want to waste all your time going through the nuances of this. But there were a lot of different things, particularly with hemp, outlawing hemp drinks, outlawing this and that and the other. And so it really was that we could possess 2.5 ounces, you still risk going to jail. I can't handle that. I can't. So what people did was, there's another provision in the state to you got the constitutional amendment, you got the initiated statute, and you've got citizen-led referendums. All right, this is a citizen referendum that has been started by a group of people who want to restore issue two to the revised code. Essentially, when you pass a bill on SB 56, you put those clauses into the revised code, and either they take out the others or what have you. But they want to take it back and make it so that the issue two is again the law of the land. They're doing this with a referendum that's a repeal referendum that would repeal SB 56. The deadline is a very tight deadline. The deadline is the end of next week, which I think is the 19th of March. It's the 19th of March is what this, it's a drop dead deadline. And you have to have 250,000, I think, signatures. Closer to, as we know, from having done ballots, you should need to have double that because of the screw ups that are in some of the ones that get signed. So anyways, but the law says it's like 200, let's say for the sake of argument, it's 250. I don't know exactly the perfect number there. 250,000 signatures by then. And if that happens, all right, if that happens, then the bill is going to get rescinded. It goes back temporarily to issue 2. And it's kind of like taking the bill it'll go into the election in the fall, and you will vote whether, yes, I want to keep SB 56 or no, I want to get rid of it. And when you go, no, I want to get rid of it, it reverts to issue 2 in the language of issue 2 in the revised code. So that's why I say if you're bonded to this issue like me, and I actually went out yesterday and searched for a place I could sign. They are online. I think probably the Free Press still has a link to the site for the referendum. And if you do go find a place to sign the petition, it's just like all the other petitions you ever signed for this stuff.
Yeah, seek everybody.
So that you get those signatures and get back issue 2.
Yeah. And you said it's before the 28th, which is too bad because I would say seek everybody out on that day, but there are other days. Yeah. So it'd be good to seek them out, get that circulated. I've signed it 3 times myself, but no, I'm teasing.
You signed it 3 times.
Well, no, just once. Just once. I'm teasing.
You can't do that.
I've been approached at least 12 times. Yeah, no, you just sign it once. Make sure you signed it and make sure. So, I just have a question beyond what you just mentioned about the work down at State House, and I don't know if anybody has particular issues about, but the State House, they're creating this thing called the Defense Commission to develop defense manufacturing in Central Ohio. This is something that's coming forward by the majority whip. He's out of space. No, I'm kidding. He's out of Ohio. He is an Ohio person. But they're going to fund it by this to be. These are all to be's. That is a hope. And then the to be benefits or the profits from the Israeli bonds that the next legislation is going to empower the state of Ohio to continue to buy and expand. But then they have the Senate Bill 87, which is going to make it illegal for anyone to protest about it. Just watch how these things are being manipulated along the same as marijuana or hemp or anything else. These things are being manipulated to be very constructive in how they can limit resistance to what they want to get done. And we are in a supermajority state that is a problem. Phil, I didn't want to cut you out too soon. You're hearing some of our realities in Ohio. You're in Virginia. You're in a little better state than us at this point. You have some non-MAGA people in charge over there, at least. We sort of have MAGA people controlling us here. You were able to get the General Assembly back, Parliament, however you call it in Virginia. And then also the governor and other folks are at least open to different politics. We're not there in Ohio. They claim we're deep red. All surveys, political surveys, indicate that not to be. Whenever it takes, as Mary Jane was mentioning, that referendum or that initiative process, we win by 70%. Now, almost 70% most of the time. It's amazing when those things go forward, meaning that we're not totally red, basically. I don't know, Phil, if you have anything or if anybody else has messages that want to say, and Tim just sent thank you to you for your word today. So thanks again for dropping out of the conference for a minute, and but continue. I do know that there is a work, and we need to know this because we probably will want to be part of it, is a caravan, a national caravan to develop mutual aid to go from one point to many other points along down to Cuba, and for this time. So I don't know if Phil, you have any updates on that at this point, or if anybody else has work. Will just jumped on. I know he wants to say something before we shut out too. So Phil, why don't you do something and we'll do our thing.
Well, I think that the caravans, and the one I know about is by IFCO, Pastors for Peace.
Yeah.
They travel around the country and gathering supplies and holding local meetings. And I always thought that was really terrific because they're reaching, it's not just preaching to the choir, although that is important. If you neglect the choir, you won't have any music. And if we don't keep,
and the choir does need to have four voices, and four voices need to practice together. So there you go.
No, but even when the masses are moving, the activists better be doing something to keep themselves in shape. But I like the idea of traveling through the country, stopping at different cities, holding public meetings, and trying to get some local media on it, because there's a good way to keep the issue of Cuba and the issue of the blockade in public minds. I don't think most of the left is just talking to itself, but we need to do better about our own communications. I wish there were a national YouTube channel that covered what's going on in terms of organizing in the country, what community work is going on around housing, electrical costs, discrimination, police brutality, that could give voice to the Black, Latino, Asian, Indigenous communities. And we don't, we often don't think of ourselves as a national movement unless we belong to some national organization. But there are so many people in so many places doing good local work, and they don't know about each other. And that's part of the reason why it's so easy to get depressed. In Virginia, you're right. The Democrats took the trifecta, the governor mansion and the two houses of the legislature. So, it's wonderful. Now the party that presided over the genocide in Gaza is now in charge of the state of Virginia. And I'm not dogmatic about this. We'll support someone who's progressive on the issues, but, regardless of their political affiliation. But I do know that once they get to Washington, they change. And we have seen that over and over and over with people who we knew personally. This is, a relatively small city and a small state. And we know people who personally have moved on to Washington, and immediately they seem to get sat down and oriented and told what the deal is. Next thing you know, they're voting for funding for Israel. So, in dealing with politics, I'm sorry, it was really interesting to hear about this new bill that, it's going through in Ohio, and how it might be illegal to protest against the development of, if I got it right, the development of the defense industry in central Ohio and its connection to Israeli bonds. They're definitely, cracking down and pulling in the reins and trying to make it more and more difficult for us to protest. But the way you fight that is by protesting with more people. So again, I'm going to have to get off now, but I really appreciate, again, the opportunity to reconnect with my good friends in Columbus, and make a special effort to try to stay in better touch. And good luck to all the work that you're doing. I know you've been doing it for so long, and I expect you're going to be doing it for a good while longer, as I hope.
I guess the work is on the table. Thanks, Phil, again, and freepress.org. We just got our website up, and then we do have WGRN, WCRS, and many podcasts and other plays that you're more than welcome to send programming to. If you've recorded things, we'd love to have those. We're locally produced. Most of the things we do use international or national sources. So please join that effort if you can. And anybody on this line, write for the Free Press and talk WCRS and WGRN and any of one of our new website, we are very happy about. It took us 17 and a half years. No, I'm kidding. It took a long time. freepress.org. Check it out. It's beautiful. Be part of it and like it. And then as you go off your YouTube, go back to it and say, you know, what was said tonight, I liked. Do that, please. Some other things are great. We'll be back in April. April is WGRN's birthday. And Tim, do you have any details, or Suzanne, anybody on, that'll be our focus on the Earth Day birthday, which is WGRN. It has sort of really taken on that message locally for, God, what is it, 20 years now, 25? What is it? I'm sorry. What are we celebrating? What birthday are we celebrating for WGRN?
It would be their 10th anniversary.
10th. Oh, wow.
We started in 2016.
Okay.
And we started just right around Earth Day, which is why we celebrate our Earth Day birthday. So it's going to be at the Old First Presbyterian Church. Isn't it like a noonish kind of event, Mark? Is it not?
Okay, this is new to me. I mean, I know we've been.
No, it's not new, Mark.
I know, no, it's
We
good.
talked about that.
I'm glad that the powers that be agreed to that agreement. So that's good that we got that agreement. Good, thank you. So come on out. We'll have food, music, and enjoyment. The one person I really am going to miss at all from now on is Parks, Victoria, the Queen of Hearts. She always was a very strong proponent of the early days of WGRN, and had a song that I really liked. And I would like if someone could recount that one and play that one at birthday. I don't know if anyway we could. Maybe we could get Brian or somebody to come and sing that one that she used to sing. That she created that. Early days of GRN. Do you remember what I'm talking about? I forget the song right now, but it was.
Say it again. Bob has it.
No, I think it's My Vote Don't Matter Anymore.
That might be what it is. My vote don't matter. That was one of them. That's right. She had some great ones when she was on fire. Well, that woman was on fire. We miss her, and we miss a lot of our people that were around. So you guys don't leave nowhere. Don't leave nowhere. Come on now. Don't leave nowhere.
I'm going to cut off the